White founts falling in the courts of the sun, and the Soldan of Byzantium is smiling as they run. There is laughter like the fountains in that face of all men feared. It stirs the forest darkness, the darkness of his beard. It curls the blood-red crescent, the crescent of his lips. For the inmost sea of all the earth is shaken with his ships. They have dared the white republics up the capes of Italy. They have dashed the Adriatic round the lion of the sea. And the Pope has cast his arms abroad for agony and loss, and called the kings of Christendom for swords about the cross. The cold Queen of England is looking in the glass. The shadow of the Valois is yawning at the mass. For evening isles fantastical rings faint the Spanish gun, and the Lord upon the golden horn is laughing in the sun. Dim drums throbbing in the hills half heard, where only a nameless throne a crownless prince has stirred, where risen from a doubtful seat and half attained stall, the last knight of Europe takes weapons from the wall. The last and lingering troubadour to whom the bird was sung, that once went singing southward when all the world was young. In that enormous silence, tiny and unafraid, comes up along a winding road the noise of the crusade. Strong gongs groaning as the guns boom far. Don John of Austria is going to the war. Stiff flags straining in the night blasts cold, in the gloom black purple, in the glint old gold. Torchlight crimson on the copper kettle drums, then the tuckets, then the trumpets, then the cannon, and he comes, Don John laughing in the brave beard curled, spurning of his stirrups like the thrones of all the world, holding his head up for a flag of all the free. Love light of Spain, hurrah! Death light of Africa, Don John of Austria is riding to the sea. Mahund is in his paradise above the evening star. Don John of Austria is going to the war. He moves a mighty turban on the timeless Houri's knees, his turban that is woven of the sunset and the seas. He shakes the peacock gardens as he rises from his ease, and he strides among the treetops and is taller than the trees. And his voice through all the garden is a thunder sent to bring black Azrael and Ariel and Ammon on the wing, giants and the genii, multiplex of wing and eye, whose strong obedience broke the sky when Solomon was king. They rush in red and purple from the red clouds of the morn, from temples where the yellow gods shut up their eyes in scorn. They rise in green robes, roaring from the green hells of the sea, where fallen skies and evil hues and eyeless creatures be. On them the sea valves cluster and the gray sea forests curl, splashed with a splendid sickness, the sickness of the pearl. They swell in sapphire smoke out of the blue cracks of the ground. They gather and they wonder and give worship to Mahund. And he saith, break up the mountains where the hermit folk can hide, and sift the red and silver sands lest bone of saint abide, and chase the Georors, flying night and day, not giving rest, for that which was our trouble comes again out of the west. We have set the seal of Solomon on all things under sun, of knowledge and of sorrow and an endurance of things done. But noise is in the mountains, and I know the voice that shook our palaces 400 years ago. It is he that saith not Kismet. It is he that knows not fate. It is Richard. It is Raymond. It is Godfrey in the gate. It is he whose loss is laughter when he counts the wager worn. Put down your feet upon him, that our peace be on the earth. For he heard drums groaning and he heard guns jar. Don John of Austria is going to the war. Sudden and still, hurrah, bolt from Iberia. Don John of Austria is gone by Elcalar. St. Michael's on his mountains, on the sea roads of the north. Don John of Austria is girt and going forth, where the gray seas glitter and the sharp tides shift, and the sea folk labor, and the red sails lift. He shakes his lance of iron, and he claps his wings of stone. The noise has gone through Normandy. The noise has gone alone. The North is full of tangled things and texts and aching eyes, and dead is all the innocence of anger and surprise. And Christian killeth Christian in a narrow, dusty room, and Christian dreadeth Christ that hath a newer face of doom. And Christian hateth Mary that God kissed in Galilee, but John of Austria is riding to the sea. John calling through the blast and the eclipse, crying with the trumpet of his lips, trumpet that saith, Ha! Domino Gloria. John of Austria is shouting to the ships. King Philip's in his closet with the fleece upon his neck. John of Austria is armed upon the deck. The walls are hung with velvet that is black and soft as sin. The little dwarfs creep out of it, and little dwarfs creep in. He holds a crystal phial that has colors like the moon. He touches, and it tingles, and he trembles very soon. And his face is as fungus of a leprous white and gray, like plants in the high houses that are shuttered from the day. The death is in his phial and the end of noble work, but John of Austria has fired upon the Turk. John's hunting and his hounds have bayed. Booms away past Italy the rumor of his raid. Gun upon gun, ha ha! Gun upon gun, hurrah! John of Austria has loosed his cannonade. The Pope was in his chapel before day or battle broke. John of Austria is hidden in the smoke. The hidden room in man's house where God sits all the year, the secret window whence the world looks small and very dear. He sees as in a mirror on the monstrous twilight sea the crescent of his cruel ships whose name is mystery. They fling great shadows forwards, making cross and castle dark. They veil the plumed lions on the galleys of St. Mark. And above the ships are palaces of brown, black-bearded chiefs, and below the ships are prisons where with multitudinous griefs, Christian captives sick and sunless, all a laboring race repines, like a race in sunken cities, like a nation in the mines. They are lost like slaves that swat, and in the skies of morning hung the stairways of the tallest gods when tyranny was young. They are countless, voiceless, hopeless as those fallen or fleeing on before the high king's horses in the granite of Babylon. And many a one grows witless in his quiet room in hell, where a yellow face looks inward through the lattice of his cell, and he finds his God forgotten, and he seeks no more sign. But John of Austria has burst the battle line. John pounding from the slaughter painted poop, purpling all the ocean like a bloody pirate sloop. Scarlet running over on the silvers and the golds, breaking off the hatches up, bursting off the holds, thronging of the thousands up that labor under the sea, white for bliss and blind for sun and stunned for liberty. Vivat Hispania, Domino Gloria. John of Austria has set his people free. Cervantes on his galley sets the swords back in the sheath. John of Austria rides homeward with a wreath, and he sees across a weary land a straggling road in Spain, up which a lean and foolish knight forever rides in vain. And he smiles, but not as sultans smile, and settles back the blade. But John of Austria rides home from the crusade. Lepanto by G.K. Chesterton. Happy feast, everybody.
Blessed feast to you, Flanders. Our Lady of Victory today. And that's why we're commemorating with that remarkable poem by Chesterton on the namesake of our show's title. So what else you got for us today, my man?
That was the first time I've ever read that. It was fantastic. I was epic. What an epic. I remember my daughter had to memorize the Battle of the Light, or the Charge of the Light Brigade by I don't know, remember William Lord Stevenson or whoever, somebody. And I just found out recently that was written in it was about the Crimean War. They were just fighting over Ukraine, basically. Whereas this epic poem it's not really an epic poem. It's a poem that's epic, because an epic poem's like Homer, but this is much more pious than the bare superficial nationalism of the British Empire, as in the Charge of the Light Brigade. But it is such a great feast day. We're going to talk all about it today, and depicted beautifully, of course, as always, by Michaela Harrison in this beautiful entry in the calendar. You have obviously the Lepanto battle right here in the middle, and Our Lady holding up the Rosary with the Christ child. It's just so epic. And the painting that Mrs. Flanders put on the cover of the book, City of God, City of Man, that was this is what we put up, and it's on the thumbnail, and it's what we'll have on our background. But let's see, why is it so exciting to be a Catholic this week? Well, here's why. First of all, it's the 20th Sunday after Pentecost, aka the 27th Sunday, Tempus Parianum. And we have a great visionary, St. Bridget of Sweden, this week. St. John Leonard, St. Francis Borgia, who was I believe St. Francis was a widower who later on became a religious, if I'm not mistaken. But then we have the maternity of the Blessed Virgin Mary. This is a feast which commemorates the Council of Ephesus. And this is one of the most compelling things that really struck me when I wrote my book, City of God versus City of Man. I never realized how incredibly pervasive the cult of Artemis Ephesia was in the ancient world. And this is the first big cultural triumph of Mary over a demon goddess. We have Our Lady of Guadalupe. Many of you know the story of Our Lady of Guadalupe triumphing over the Aztec goddesses and et cetera, et cetera. But this was the OG triumph, which is Our Lady of Ephesus, 431. Our Lady is enthroned as the Queen of Heaven, the Mother of God, in the city of Ephesus, which is one of the Temple of Diana, aka Artemis Ephesia, was one of the seven wonders of the ancient world. Ephesus was one of the greatest cities of the Roman Empire, and 431 was the time when Our Lady was replaced. Artemis Ephesia was replaced by the Theotokos. And it's really a glorious commemoration that we do well to remember. And I think the Second Vatican Council was opened October 11, I believe, too. It's October. It's October, but I believe
it was the 13th. But
the 13th?
There may have been. Well, it's one of these two for sure.
Let's look up that date.
I may be mistaken on that. Pope John gave his address 62. Oh, it's going to come back to me right after we finish the show.
Well, do you have any comments about the week, Mr. Fowler?
About the week, other than to say Ephesus is one of the most glorious councils that there ever has been, and everyone should know all about it. I did a show. It is
October 11.
Oh, excellent!
The opening of Vatican II. Yeah.
So we're 62 years post opening Vatican II, and Rome is doing some sort of meeting to commemorate it. I'm sure that's what they're thinking. No, just Ephesus and Our Lady are things that every Catholic should know, in addition to Our Lady of Victory, or there's another title, Our Lady of the Rosary is the other title. So that sort of leads us into, you have some vague notion of something Catholic to do with some beads. I'm trying to set you up, man.
Oh, thank you. But first, I have to go back to Ephesus because it's just so awesome. Okay. What I love about the Council of Ephesus is that the Council of Ephesus was more or less a disaster in terms of the human element. I mean, there were like monks killing each other throughout Ephesus. It was just a total train wreck, but great good came out of it nonetheless. There was, right after the Council of Ephesus, there was a big schism that happened right after. They had to patch things up in 433. Two years later, they had to put a new council of formula of reunion between John of Antioch and Cyril of Alexandria. So that's one of the things I love about it, is that it's enthroning the Theotokos against Artemis Ephesia. It was a total disaster in terms of all this violence between the bishops and monks and all this stuff. Craziness was happening. Schism happened right after, but they patched it up. So it was like the Mother of God bringing light out of darkness. So do you have a show about it, Fowler? In one of
I
your
do. Yeah.
You do?
Let
Okay.
me try to find it.
So
So it's part of the Ecumenical Council series, which we're coming up on 3 years post. And not to give away the farm here, but I think whatever counts as season 2 is probably going to be underway in the next few months, because I'll be teaching again our Sunday school program, which is actually on Wednesdays now. That's where I did all the prep for. Oh, you're faster than I am. I see you've got it down there.
yeah.
That's where I did all the prep for the council series. So I practice taught it to a bunch of high schoolers on Sundays. And that's what provided me the material, the time to research, and then the practice to go and do it on air. So I'll be doing a similar thing. And I think we're going to pick up with Lateran 1, because I ended with Constantinople 4. So if I'm not mistaken, the next one is Lateran 1. We'll just probably plow through. And if we get to Trent, that's great. And if we don't, that's fine too. And then if there's ever a series 3, season 3, it'll be Trent, Vatican 1, Vatican 2.
Yeah, this is in 21 parts right now.
That's right.
That's where we're at right now. So you've made it to the second millennium, but you've got several councils. So quickly though, Fowler, why do you love Council of Ephesus so much?
I love Ephesus because Cyril of Alexandria stole Roman authority in order to condemn a notorious heretic who didn't show up at his own trial, because your accuser, Nestorius's accuser, was his judge, deputized by Pope Celestine. But Cyril added, so Celestine says, all right, look, go deal with this Nestorian heresy. This is not good. And Cyril says, thanks, Holy Father, I appreciate that. Let me just take this document here. I'm going to add a bunch of stuff to it and make Nestorius submit to all kinds of things that the Pope didn't say. So Nestorius thinks this is bogus. He doesn't even go to the council. Naturally, he's condemned. He's exiled. The emperor at the time, I think it's Theodosius II. Don't quote me on that. It's been a while since I've reviewed my notes. Nonetheless,
actually,
the council is held.
The Empress Saint Pulcheria actually is the one who heads up Ephesus and Chalcedon. One of the great saints that's unknown. But anyways, but I think you could be right, because there is a boy emperor. That's the reson that she's the empress.
No, but now that you said that,
I'll look it up. I'll look it up right now. Please
his name begins with an M. So anyhow, the council does the work in one day, but John of Antioch, he and his deputation have not yet arrived, and so they find out that, hey, what do you mean you already had the council? We're not there yet. Well, yeah, it's because you've been delaying this whole time. You said you'd be there in 3 weeks, and it's been like 2 months. So Cyril just holds the council, like I said, and the bishops all agree Nestorius is to be condemned, deposed, exiled, etc. Eventually, John and his deputation show up. They tried to hold a second council where they depose Nestorius. The empire's officials get involved, the imperial leaders. They do it again, officially, we'll say, and Cyril is victorious a second time. Nestorius condemned, deposed, the heresy condemned. And then that evening, the laity sing hymns to Mary. There's a candlelit procession through the streets of Ephesus, and the rest is history, as they say. But that's why I like Ephesus, because you've got monks with clubs threatening other monks, all in the name of orthodoxy.
It's funny, like Saint Cyril, doctor of the church, he's kind of an anti-hero. I mean, he's not he's not exactly pristine vision of purity here in all of his
he's
dealings.
like Batman.
He's bribing people. He's got these monk shock troops with these clubs. But I think he is a saint, doctor of the church. To me, his shining moment is when he reconciles with John of Antioch immediately after all this chaos happens.
Which is a great act of humility.
But he could have said, okay, you want to reconcile, here's my shock troops. He could have continued being quite belligerent as he was doing. But I think that his zeal was for true orthodoxy. So he went to some excesses, with that zeal. But when he reconciled with Antioch, I think he shows that his zeal is ultimately for orthodoxy for the sake of the church, not for the sake of just like being right. Like he doesn't just care about I'm right. He cares about the unity of the church in orthodoxy. And that's why that kind of like shows his true colors to me. Anyhow, what a crazy story. It's wonderful. So that'll be our commemoration this week. A great commemoration. So I wanted to just say two things about the Rosary that might be unconventional or controversial. The second one will definitely be controversial, but the first one is that thanks be to God, it is quite common for many Catholics to pray 5 decades of the Rosary every day. And that's a wonderful thing. It's what a great thing that custom has endured. And to the trads, I must also point out that, some trads don't like the luminous mysteries, for example. But in fact, I was just talking with a friend of mine, and he was pointing out how Pope St. John Paul II was actually far more traditional than Pope Benedict in many ways. And one of the ways was that he promoted traditional devotions, liturgically speaking, much more than Pope Benedict did. And this was very, very traditional. And one of the things that he promoted was, in fact, the Rosary, because the Rosary had actually fallen into disuse in many places of Europe. And John Paul II actually brought it back to a large degree. And he introduced, and part of that was introducing the Luminous Mysteries, which were written by a recent saint, the Apostle of Malta. But what I want to do here is I want to read the account from Matins. And then I want to comment a little bit about St. Louis de Montfort's exhortations about the Rosary, which are going to challenge us all because it's a challenge. It's more than just what many of us do. And so here's the count from Matins for this feast day is this. When the heresy of the Albigensians flourished throughout the region of Toulouse with impious blossom and was sending forth deeper roots day by day, St. Dominic, who had lately laid the foundation of the order of preachers, gave himself wholly to the task of overturning it. That he might accomplish this the more effectually, he implored with fervent prayers the aid of the Blessed Virgin, whose dignity those errors shamelessly attacked, and to whom it was granted to slay all heresies throughout the whole world. By her, so tradition has handed down, he was advised to preach the Rosary to the people as a singular defense against the heresies. It is wonderful to note with what fervor of mind and with what happy success he executed the office enjoined upon him. The Rosary is a certain formula of prayer, which we distinguish 15 decades of angelic salutations interspersed with the Lord's Prayer. And as we recite them, we venerate with loving meditation the mysteries of our redemption. From that time, then, this pious method of prayer began through St. Dominic to be published abroad and to increase. And indeed, the chief pontiffs have everywhere in apostolic letters affirmed that Dominic was its institutor and author. Thenceforth, innumerable fruits flowed out of the Christian Republic from this most healthful devotion. Among these is rightly reckoned the famous victory which Pius V and the Christian princes stirred up by him gained in the Gulf of Lepanto over a most powerful Turkish tyrant. For on the very day on which this victory was gained, the Confraternity of the Holy Rosary throughout the whole world were accomplishing their accustomed supplications and, according to their wont, pouring forth their appointed prayers. To those prayers, therefore, the victory is not undeservedly attributed. Now, this is a historical part that I didn't know until today. There's an additional battle that they attributed to the Rosary that gets associated with this feast day as well. Clement the 11th considered most carefully in his mind the date on which Charles VI, Emperor-elect of the Romans, had also gained a victory in 1716 in Hungary over innumerable forces of the Turks. That date coincided with the feast of the dedication of St. Mary of the Snows, and the victory was achieved almost at the very time when the Brethren of the Most Holy Rosary were in the mother city conducting with great devotion, and amid a huge concourse of people, their solemn public supplication, and pouring out further prayers to God for the overthrow of the Turks, humbly imploring the powerful aid of the Virgin Mother of God as help of Christians. Clement proved that to the patronage of the Virgin was due this victory also, as well as the delivery of the island of Corcyra from Turkish blockade, an event which followed soon after. So, We've got, I didn't even realize there was another massive battle in 1716, because I thought it was back in the Battle of Zenta in 1697 that was kind of the beginning of the end for the Turks. But it reminds me of Callaway's book, and I don't remember where, I don't remember where exactly I put it, but it's called something like, oh, here it is, Champions of the Rosary. This one right here. Champions of the Rosary. So if you want more battles and excitement with the Rosary, take this book from Callaway. We love, I love Donald Callaway. He's the one who did the Consecration to Joseph book. I really like that text, which I've done. I've done the consecration twice with him, and I really love it. But he has a ton of stuff in here that's really great. So if you love a bunch of Rosary battles, you can read that book. And then there's The Secret of the Rosary by St. Louis de Montfort. St. Louis de Montfort, of course, is the sort of doctor of Marian devotion. I think he should be proclaimed that for sure. But why? The question is why, besides just the intercession of the Mother of God, is there a deeper reason, or maybe an intrinsic reason to the Rosary as to why it wins all these battles? First of all, St. Louis de Montfort mentions how the devil, this is from his True Devotion to Mary, he says the devil fears Mary in some ways more than God. And the reason is because the devil, being proud, is more hateful. He hates Mary more than God, because by being beat by Mary, he is beat by a creature, and he feels his pride is destroyed more powerfully by Mary. And so God has, in his wisdom, he has appointed Mary to be the one who crushes his head by her heel, because this is the perfect way to destroy Satan, by taking the most powerful angel, who's really, I mean, the devil is really the most powerful creature that, he's the head angel with all this, to be destroyed by this little woman, this little maid. And this is what, and there's another aspect to this, and this comes from the consideration of the intrinsic nature of what the Rosary is. And this struck me very deeply recently when I was reading Psalm 25:26. Verse 3 says, "For thy loving kindness is ever before mine eyes, and I will walk in thy truth." So what the Rosary is putting the loving kindness of the Lord before your eyes. And many years ago, this must have been like 6 or 7 years ago, a friend of mine said, "You should really pray 15 decades every day." And I was like, "What? That's a lot, bro." And he's like, and he showed me this video that a bunch of lay people were praying 15 decades every day. And this coincides with the fact that St. Louis de Montfort, in his book, he says, Secret of the Rosary, he says everybody should be praying all 15 decades every day. And, this is a priest. He's already praying to hold a divine office. So he's putting in an hour or two already with the divine office. And then he's like, no, then in addition to that, we should all be praying 15 decades, which takes about 45 minutes or so. And I was stirred with zeal by my friend who did it himself. And this video that he showed me, where all these lay people were praying 15 decades a day and all the extra graces. And so I tried it out. I tried doing 15 decades every day. And it's not as hard as you think, especially if you're a commuter. So if you're a commuter, what you do is you take 15 minutes in the morning to pray the joyful mysteries. And then you drive on your commute and you pray the sorrowful mysteries, 15 minutes. And then on your drive home, you pray the glorious. So you've got boom, boom, boom right there. Now, the trick is you have to do it, on Saturday and Sunday. But so I started to do it with my commute. So it wasn't that difficult to do, because my commute was actually like 25 minutes. So I already had extra time to do the commute. So I started to do this, and I found that the graces that I gained from this practice, not because I'm great, but because the Rosary is great, were very, very powerful to me. And the reason is because my particular sin pattern that I was dealing with was a bunch of evil thoughts and thoughts that were coming into my brain, and it was difficult for me to deal with them. And the remarkable thing about the 15-decade rosary, which is this is Mary Psalter, which is 150. It becomes 150 Aves, which corresponds to the 150 Psalms. So this is what the 15-decade cycle is Mary Psalter. And this is not to disparage the luminous mysteries, because I think the luminous mysteries are very traditional, because traditionally there's all sorts of different forms of the rosary. We're just talking about the Dominican version. So it's very traditional to meditate on the Gospels. So it is not traditional to say we should not use the luminous mysteries. That's not traditional. There's so many different traditional forms. I'm simply talking about one of those versions, which is the Mary Psalter. And so I'm just saying that I found a great deal of spiritual benefit in my spiritual life. I found that evil thoughts, I found that what you're doing is your intellect is focusing on the loving kindness of the Lord. And so your heart is following after what your intellect thinks about. And it's quite remarkable when you do the 15-decade, because you're just constantly going through the whole story. And so as you finish the joyful, you're excited to get into the passion, and then as the passion ends, then you want to get into the resurrection. And so you're going through the story, and so it actually becomes easier. In fact, I have a close friend who started doing the 15-decade every day, and he was like, I've struggled to do 5 decades every day for a long time, but suddenly when I started to do the 15-decade, it was actually a lot easier to do the rosary every day. But it's remarkable when you start to really just think about these mysteries. When these mysteries start to pervade your brain, how incredibly powerful that is, the graces that come from that. And I certainly found that many years ago. And that's why I promote this, just saying, like, I did this and you should too. And it's not that difficult. It can be done. And it's something that's very, very powerful, something that can really change things. It changed things for me. It could change things for you. That's my first point about the rosary. Fowler, any comments?
Just that if you're going to do things like that, however great or small, it requires, at least in some sense, a lifestyle change. And I think that's where, people get hung up. And I'm part of people, right? As much as you are, and anybody who sees this. We're living in a time in a society that's built fundamentally on anti-Catholic principles. And so to carve out a chunk of your life and sort of get back to our roots, not sort of, to actually get back to our roots, is a difficult thing. You may be thinking to yourself, folks, same thing I was thinking, like, who has time for that? I would love to pray 15 days. I don't have time for that. But we do. Yes, we do. There shall be no more excuses, right? If you don't want to pray 15, fine, pray something else. But make time, and that's the key. You have to get you must put yourself in a place where God can reach you, right? He wants to do all the work. All you have to do is just give him a few minutes. And so again, if you can do 5, do 5, 10, do 15. If you want to do 20, do 20. But whatever it is, we break out of the cycle of normal Western life, which is get up, go to work, come home, rinse and repeat, soccer on the weekends and football on Sunday, and break out of that and reconsecrate time for God, even if it is just a couple of minutes. I sometimes tell my students, well, Mr. Fowler, I can't pray for 30 minutes a day. That's fine. Can you pray for 1 minute? If you could pray for 1 minute for 2, if you could do that for 2 months, then do you think you can pray for 1.5 minutes, maybe 2, and do that for 2 months? And so they see where this is going. After a year, well, maybe you can pray for 10 minutes a day. And again, there's no reason that any of us can't find 10 minutes a day. I mean, we probably spend 10 minutes scrolling every day. So replace it with something else.
Yeah, and I don't think that this is it can practice. The 15-decade can also be done taking 15 decades by yourself, and then you take 5 decades by yourself. You take then you put the 5 decades with the family, and then you've just got another 5 walking the dog at the night or something. Just spending some time with this, it can be done without too much difficulty, and not because I mean, we have our duties of our state in life. We all have to work, take care of kids, et cetera, et cetera. But I believe that this can be integrated into our daily life, and it can make a huge impact, as it has on me. But as you said, it's not for everybody. It's not like if you don't do this, you're not a good Catholic or whatever like that. Certainly not that. But this is just a devotion. Everybody has their favorite devotions or different devotions that have impacted them. Different saints have promoted different devotions because they believe that they're kind of the answer to our times, or this, that, the other thing. And I certainly believe that the 15-decade rosary it certainly was an answer to me personally, right, and it could be for you. So that's all I'm saying. The second part is,
and it's
another
easy. Sorry,
more...
real quick.
Oh,
real
go
quick.
ahead.
It's so easy to jump into, because all you have to do is grab your beads and start praying. There's no specific ritual involved. It's not like you have to be in a church. You can do this literally anywhere. You can pause. If you're at work and you don't have to be talking to somebody, you can be praying. And then when you do have to answer the phone, just pause. You can pray a rosary throughout your daily life. So it can be done. Maybe it's a little hard to keep track of. Fair point.
Mm-hmm.
But it can be done.
Yeah. So last thing I'll say, and this is going to be the most controversial thing that we don't have time to get into further, but and that is the second thing that I've found very, very powerful for me personally, and could be for you. Not for everybody, but it is praying the rosary at the Mass. And that is the subject of the article here today at 1 Peter 5. And this was, I wrote this 5 years ago. So I've been doing this for 6 or 7 years. I've been praying the rosary at the Mass. And to me, it has been very, very spiritually uplifting, powerful, edifying, etc. for me. And that's because I connect the mysteries with the liturgical actions of the Mass. And therefore, I meditate upon the Mass as well when I'm not at the Mass. Because the rosary is actually a meditation of what the Mass is. The liturgical action is the life, death, and resurrection of Christ. That's what the liturgical action is sacramentally presenting. And so by praying the rosary, you're actually meditating on what the Mass is. Now, a little bit of polemics we have to go over, unfortunately, is that this is a practice that our forefathers have done for literally centuries, that has been approved by the church. Nobody had any problem with this practice for many, many years. In fact, Leo XIII recommended, he wanted people to pray the rosary during October, during a certain year of his pontificate. But because of the liturgical, and this goes back to St. John Paul II, why St. John Paul II was more liturgically conservative and traditional than Pope Benedict, because Pope Benedict was part of the liturgical movement. And the liturgical movement, one of the presuppositions of the liturgical movement was that, I just put myself up there. Oops. One of the presuppositions was that the liturgical prayer of the priest is superior to the devotional prayer of the laity. Now, I think that is true in the objective sense. The public prayer of the church is always going to trump any other prayer, because these are the words of Christ in the Holy Scripture, the words of the liturgy, the public liturgy. They're always like objectively better and superior in the objective sense, in an abstract sense. But that does not mean that for any particular pious soul, they are better for them. That doesn't mean that every single person has to pray all the words in their missal and all the prayers of the priest. No, that's not true. You can pray in different ways that are the best prayer for you personally. And I've simply found that the best prayer for me personally is praying the rosary at the Mass. And this is something that's been just drilled into me again and again as I just do it. So we only have 5 more minutes, and I don't want to, you can go read the article for an explanation of this. And one of the aspects of this is that the rosary is 1 part vocal prayer and 1 part mental prayer. And the spiritual writers, on the other hand, at the same time as we can say that the public prayer of the church is objectively superior to any private devotion, we also need to claim that the spiritual writers say that mental prayer is objectively superior in the spiritual life than vocal prayer. And so the public vocal prayers of the church, in a sense, they are nevertheless vocal prayer. And so practicing mental prayer at the Holy Mass, whether that's coming from the Rosary or you're entering into some kind of mental prayer practice during the Holy Mass, and thus you are not actually saying the responses or singing whatever is there, is very edifying and very profitable, and something that it's very unfortunate that has not been encouraged anymore, but everyone's sort of forced into this one box. And again, if that box is the best for you, please do it. That is what you should do. But we should not be forcing all the faithful to just be in one particular box, but there's always been multiple streams of devotion and prayers at the Mass, and that's one of the beauties of the Mass. Father, your comments.
I should probably reserve my comments for a time when we're going to disagree, because Pius X has some choice words against everything you just said. So we'll just leave it at that. We should do a Dialogos on that maybe in December or January. That would be good. Because that was part of the liturgical movement. It's kind of getting everybody back on the same page instead of private devotional practices, which in and of themselves are supremely beautiful and glorious. But I digress.
Well, stay tuned for the fisticuffs between my cocktail and Father's cocktail as we fight each other virtually next time.
That's another segment we have to introduce.
Great.
The battle of the cocktails.
And you know what? I that reminds me, because I completely forgot to promote the Dialogos that we're having tonight.
Wait, we're on tonight?
I have to clip.
No, just kidding.
I've been so excited that I totally forgot about all the timestamps for all this stuff.
We're welcoming none other than Christopher Plants. Thumbnail's a bit misleading because some of our confreres are unable to make it. However,
that's okay. It's
okay.
We're always promoting their stuff. So, should Catholics create a Catholic political party in every nation? Well, that is what Christopher Plants is going to present to us, is that this is what we have. I tend to agree with this, Fowler, spoiler alert, because I think that the Catholicism, at least in the United States, the Republican and Democratic Party have been utterly corrupted. Both of them are totally corrupt. And they're both corrupting Catholicism. And they're corrupting the integrity of the Catholic political thought. And so I think founding a Catholic political party is the way forward in the United States and perhaps elsewhere. So should we create a Catholic political party? Talk tonight. You can join the Dialogos live if you join one of our platforms. You can become a patron subscriber of Christopher Plants. You can be a locals guy with Fowler, etc. Click one of the links below to join the Dialogos live and discuss, should we create a Catholic political party? All right, sweet. There we go. Well, with that, let us offer up our own Ave Maria, because this is the feast of Our Lady of the Rosary. And let's offer up and I don't have the Our Lady of Fatima.
Let's use the painting as our center.
The Our Lady of Guadalupe is in the intro of this video, and Our Lady of Guadalupe is connected with Lepanto because the icon was carried into battle. And then this is obviously the icon of Fatima, where Our Lady asked us to pray the Rosary. So let's pray. In nomine Patris et Filii Spiritus Sancti. Amen. Ave Maria, gratia plena, Dominus tecum, benedicta tu mulieribus, et benedictus fructus ventris tui, Jesus.
Sancta Maria, Mater Dei, ora pro nobis peccatoribus, nunc et in hora mortis nostrae. Amen.
Our Lady of Victory.
Ora pro nobis.
Mary, Queen of the Home.
Ora pro nobis.
Saint Joseph, Terror of Demons.
Ora pro nobis.
Saint Anthony of the Desert, pray for all clergy and seminarians. In nomine Patris et Filii Spiritus Sancti. Amen. Jesus is King.